Well, we're firing up again. Today is the 4th of September and taking advantage of the very warm and positively humid conditions again. Hoping, as in the last couple of trapping sessions, to drag in maybe the odd migrant, and following the success of my recent visit and trapping at Lound Wood, where lots of stage Stichticalis made a very welcome presence, only the 4th record for Nottinghamshire. I'm hoping for 1 or 2 more migrants tonight, and that's why I've made the effort to come out and trap. It's overcast, no sign of any of the predicted light rain showers. It was pretty much a gamble. Do I come out here and risk setting up for 5 minutes and getting wet, or do I stay in the comfort of my own garden? Eakring it is, probably hornets and all. Well, as you can see, the moths are starting to come in. This is a carpet of some kind, I imagine green carpet, but it's 8:25ish now. It's going to be pretty much the usual species, same kind of species range as we've had in the last 2 nights, but hopefully something different along the way to show you. Well, the light's already at full brightness. It takes a few minutes for an MV light to warm up and reach full brightness. If you use an MV, you have to use and have a choke system, sometimes what used to be called a ballast at one time, and that just simply regulates the amount of electric from the generator or source of electricity to the bulb. They are easy as long as you know the basics of electricity to build yourself. Robinson traps can be very expensive, but a simple trap such as this one with the light on the box, the choke is housed inside, can be made relatively cheaply. Most people will know someone who's at least competent with electrics. I did this one, and it's not blown up or caught fire or set fire to anything yet. Quite lucky that way, but I would recommend having a go making your own. Save you an awful lot of money, and if you're unsure as to whether to go into the world of moth trapping, then I would suggest looking at building your own rather than do the expensive route. You could, of course, just use a cheaper commercially made trap anyway, but nothing has the pulling power of MV. Well, you may be able to see there's a lot of moth activity, quite a few water boatmen in as well, which is always an indication of humid and warm conditions. It's surprising how many aquatic invertebrates turn up at the light. As you can see, moths are coming in at a rate of knots, and they're all the ones that you can see now. I bet be able to make out as they're coming in, they're all square spot rustics, and the odd small square spot in amongst them, and second commonest species is smoky wainscot at the moment. Typical fare for this time of year. There's one migrant in, and that's a curtailed, which is a diamondback moth. It's a micro, and that wasn't a particularly well marked one, which is often an indicator of long distance migration rather than one that's the offspring of moths arriving earlier in the spring. But there are a lot of moths coming in now. Well, it's busy, not so much in terms of species. That just had oak hook tip and nutmeg just come in. Lots of square spot rustics and a few cetaceous Hebrew characters starting to drop in now. But the most interesting of the moths that have come in, there's a snout, lands over there, is the tiniest moth that's showed up so far. And there's at least half a dozen of these. It's a gelishid type moth. Now, there is a new species that's rapidly colonising the UK, or it seems so, and it's still very much a southeastern parts of the UK species, but it's turning up in numbers. Small micro moths like that tend to race up through the country if they're invasive, and it's a moth that normally would be on sea beet, which is a plant that grows on the coast, of course. However, it is using sugar beet, and so is very likely to become, if it gains a substantial foothold, something of a pest species. It already is in Belgium, I believe, I read yesterday. Anyway, I have a number. In fact, there's one just there now on the trap. I've yet to get a good look at them, but I'm taking all of the specimens that I can see. Lots of moths on the sheet, lots of moths coming in, also flying by. Nothing too unusual yet, but it's time to have a wander around the light and just see whether anything's sneaked in without me seeing it, and that's very common. Now here's a lovely moth, and you may well recognise this as being one of the thorns, and this is canary shouldered thorn. It's the first one to appear this autumn so far. I do like thorns. They're just characteristically shaped. They're pretty unmistakable, really, always adopting this type of position. Some hold the wings slightly more out when completely relaxed. It's beautifully named as well, with those canary yellow shoulders and thorax, and the rest of the wings are equally as beautiful. It's a lovely, lovely thing, and a moth that will appear in your garden trap, but more commonly any traps operated in more rural areas. But it's a lovely moth. That's canary shouldered thorn. And a common wainscot just come in to join the fun. I don't want to move the camera, it probably won't stay there very long, but an immensely common moth, common wainscot, especially if you're trapping grassy areas. Off it goes to bother somebody else. Now here's a very different view of the proceedings. I doubt you'll see many moth trapping videos from this angle. And I am sober, it's alright, don't worry. Plenty of moth activity, but it is so warm and humid. My hornet collection presently numbers 12 now, so at least we've got a team of 11 and a substitute. One will be disappointed, they won't be playing on Saturday. But plenty of moths. So the dominant species is still square spot rustic. Very little else coming in, really. I've had silver wide. There's one, possibly two individuals. I think it was two, because one was quite small. It wasn't the small form of silver wine known as Geminina or something like that, if I remember right. But I'm glad I've come out. There's still plenty of time yet. I've not been trapping 2 hours, and I'm going to keep going with this because potentially there's something that could drop in. It's amazing how just one moth, in my case lots of Loxosteg stickticalis the other day, it can really provide the impetus to go out and trap. It's certainly done that, and with this looking to be one of the best years, if not the best year, since 2006. That's a classic year for migrants. It pays to make the most of the opportunity, especially when you get conditions like this. It is as still as the grave. When I arrived here, there was quite a breeze, and I thought that Red Hill, where I'm trapping tonight, might just be a little bit too breezy, but it isn't. It's been great. That's what breeze there was has dropped completely, and I'd say it is humid, and the moths are coming in, and the hornets. We mustn't forget the hornets. Now here's a nice moth. This is a very dark one actually. The moth that came in earlier was a much lighter colour than this, but this is oak hook-tip, and it's second brood of oak hook-tip. A terrific moth. Second brood is smaller than the first. And I've just realised that there's a hornet at the side of me just having a clean. But I do like hook-tips. An oak hook-tip isn't a moth that I catch sort of every day, but I'm trying to think whether I've had this at home, and I might not have done, but if I have, it's only been like a single record. But the spring brood, and say, is larger than this, but it's a very easy to identify species. Got those slight hooks to the tips of the wings. Yet again, moth, or a series of moths that are appropriately named. Well, just on my little routine walk around the trap, all of a sudden noticed that familiar sort of triangular or typical pyralid shape, and here it is, and it's another Loxosteg stickticalis. There's been an unprecedented influx into the UK this year. There's been a number in Lincolnshire, and there must have been a number in Nottinghamshire as well. As far as I'm aware, this is now Nottinghamshire's 5th record, not a second, within a matter of days. This is what draws you to the hobby. All of a sudden, out of the darkness, so to speak, drops a little gem. Well, quite amazing. Apart from more hornets coming in, there's a second stickticalis. I don't know where it's gone. I don't really need to pot it up. Got some great photos, but two. One of those classic instances where you can go for, well, it's 2 hours now, and you don't get an example of a certain species, and then two come in within 4 minutes of each other. Does this mean that something is afoot? It means I need to stay out for longer. As long as there's enough petrol in the generator. I dare say this hornet won't particularly be fond of this, being in the limelight. But what super insects these are. It's rare that they sit relatively still like this. This one's obviously having a good clean, hopefully not before it flies and stings me. There's one even larger. There's some very impressively large hornets this year. I've run out of pots, so I can't pot them up anymore. I just have to run the gauntlet. But they are fabulous things. The good thing about them is that they don't eat the moths, and yet if you get a trap full of these, along with the moths, by the following morning, you've usually just got a trap full of wings. One of the best wing collections you could have. But you have to admire them. They are an apex predator in the world of invertebrates in the UK, and they are a decent size. This one is not far off 2 inches. It's certainly having a good clean. When it's allowed a closer approach, dazzled by the light on the camera phone. I'm sorry if you have a great fear of wasps and hornets in general, but you do have to appreciate them. And of course they provide a fabulous service, wasps and hornets. They get an incredibly bad press. They always have done, and dare say they always will do. It's not very often you get an article in some newspaper or publication that praises hornets and wasps. Usually entirely the other. And I can understand people's fear of them, especially if they have some allergy to wasp stings. Cracking things though, they really are. Now thankfully there's not been many moths that I need to film on the sheet here. In fact, I think there's just been the 2, and that's probably a good thing. Just out of shot, you may well just be able to see this is my famous collection of hornets in pots, of which I think there's 10 pots there. As you can see, there is now as many hornets at the light as there are in pots. Well, this is a rather unexpected ending. You've missed the best bit, packing up. But all of a sudden the generator decided to cut out. It was occasionally slowing down, and sometimes it does that after a few hours. I don't think there's a petrol shortage or anything like that, but all of a sudden I was plunged into darkness. So it's been a tricky manoeuvre, packing everything away and avoiding 10 loose hornets and 10 in pots. And the ones in pots aren't so bad to deal with, but you have to be careful with the others to make sure that you don't accidentally trap them and grab hold of them. So it's been a very quick pack up, and now I'm on the way down back to the road and on the way home. But it's been a cracking night. 2 Lox's Stichticalis. You can't complain at that, like buses. And one comes, quickly followed by more. What a good night. Time to go.